All right, Colts Nation, welcome back. Special episode today because we have a special guest. Now, for those of you watching the video version, you already know what it is, but I'm not going to take for granted the fact that we have audio listeners over here. Across the screen from me, we have lead analyst for Colts on Sports Illustrated, one half of the Locked On Colts podcast, does a great job writing about and covering the Indianapolis Colts, breaking down film, not only a dedicated Colts fan, but in my opinion, a real impressive football mind as well. Someone I'm very, very excited to talk to today for that very reason, someone whose time I'm very grateful for. I present to all of you the mighty, the powerful, Zach Hicks. What's going on, brother?
Oh, it's going good, man. What an opening. That's a great way to introduce me right there. We got to start putting that on Locked On and doing that way too.
All right, so just so you know, so the people that are listening know, basically what we're going to do right here is the front end of the show. It's going to be all about Colts, current events mostly, but, kind of some stuff about the team in general. And then on the back end of the show, for those that are interested, it's going to be more of just kind of questions about you, Zach. Maybe teach the people something they don't know about you. Does that sound good?
Oh, gosh. All right, let's do it, man. Let's do it.
All right, sounds good. So let's get into it. But before we do, you know what it is. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask anyone enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. Audio listeners, leave a five-star review. Let the people know how much you're enjoying it. Subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. We're trying to get to, what is it now? I think 3,000 over here. I don't even think we're all that close, but one step at a time. If you keep coming back, enjoying the content, maybe today's today, or maybe today is the day. We butchered it, Zach. We butchered it. It is what it is. Without further ado, let's get into the questions, and we're here. So I wanted to start, as every Colts conversation starts these days, with Anthony Richardson, right? Because you guys over on Locked On do a really good job of covering the draft. I would say probably the best in the space, in my personal opinion. So I'm curious to hear from your perspective, knowing how locked in you must have been during that process, no pun intended, watching Anthony Richardson. What was your view on him out of college, and how does the guy that you're seeing right now, if at all, differ from the initial read that you had on him?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey with Anthony Richardson because if I remember back to that draft process, it was the most intense that we have been on that show in terms of studying quarterbacks because, look, everyone knew the Colts were going quarterback in that draft. There was no way they were going any other position. It was just which guy were they going. So, I went out to India. I don't live in Indy, by the way. I live in Virginia. So for anybody,
I'm in Long Island, New York myself. Don't worry.
There we go. So I live in Virginia. I drove out to Indy for the combine, and literally the whole week it was Jake stalking the quarterbacks, me trying to talk to anybody else. But who cared? Who cared about the other positions? It was all about quarterback,
of course.
And it was all about Richardson, Stroud, Young a little bit, but we all kind of figured he was going, number one in that draft. And then Will Levis too was another guy in there. Hendon Hooker got us a lot of stuff on socials too. It was just all talking quarterback. And it was funny because Jake and I were in kind of two different boats where we were doing the head coaching coverage as well. And Jake was a big fan of bring in someone like a Brian Callahan, bring in, one of these more traditional type offensive minds and go get a CJ Stroud if Stroud is there at 4, obviously, or trade up to get a CJ Stroud. Now, Jake probably won in the long term with that argument, but we'll see. The Colts can be better. Yeah. But I was a big fan, obviously, of Shane Steichen if that were an opportunity, and obviously it did end up becoming that way. And my number one guy in that draft process was Anthony Richardson. Now, did I think he was better than CJ Stroud at that moment? No. Did I think he was even better than Will Levis or Hendon Hooker at that moment? No. Look, you watch the college film on Anthony Richardson, and there was a lot of warts there. But I think the big thing for me was you're looking at this 20, 21-year-old passer who is such a ball of clay that you can just mold him to be anything you wanted him to be.
Sure.
And you get him in there with Shane Steichen, who has a proven track record with Justin Herbert with the Chargers, proven track record with Jalen Hurts, who was not the most developed passer coming into the NFL, and he turned Jalen Hurts into this fringe MVP candidate. He was top 5 in MVP voting that year. So you really got to see what Shane Steichen could do with this type of quarterback. I knew it was going to be ugly at times. I knew it was going to take some time with Anthony Richardson. But I believed in the long-term and I still believe in the long-term process. Like, I'm not even trying to say that like
Yeah, yeah,
it's
of
it's
course, of
over or
course.
anything like that.
Not even close. Yeah.
No, not even close. We're in the really early stages of it right now.
Yeah.
But when it comes to what I've seen from him so far, again, this was my QB1 in a class that had CJ Stroud, who looks like a stud. So, you
Yeah.
bite the bullet a little bit on that, because at the end of the day, if Richardson can even get to what Stroud's level is right now, you're calling that a win. But I still believe in the process. Like, I think what he showed last year in his couple starts as a rookie was way further than what we expected. Like, I didn't expect him to come out looking that efficient,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, I kind of expected more of what we've seen so far this year, which is the explosive plays, big time plays. I mean, the Colts are like the fifth most explosive offense in football right now. And
Yep.
they would be even higher if Flacco didn't play for most of the last game, because there was no real explosives when Flacco was in there in that game. But when Richardson's been out there, they're like high in yards per attempt. Their run game has been dominant. The explosives have been there. Like, it's kind of everything you expected with Richardson, but you knew the accuracy issues were going to be there, especially early. So I think when you're watching him, you see a lot of the things from college rearing their ugly head. The poor footwork at times and not being calm in the pocket when it comes to standing and delivering throws, and just a short to intermediate accuracy just hasn't been great. Now, for me, if I'm teaching a guy who can hit, 40% from half court, when it comes to the
Yeah.
three-point game, if he can
Yeah.
hit that at like a 40% clip, I can teach this kid how to do a layup. Like, let me just teach him how to do a contested layup, and we're good. Because he's got the hardest part of the position down. He knows how to stand in the pocket, avoid sacks, and deliver big time throws. He just can't do the layups yet. Like, that's the issue with him.
For sure.
So I fully believe in this long-term process in the way it's going. I do think it's going to take a lot of time. I do think Shane Steichen's kind of doing baptized by fire by, throwing these full field read concepts on him, not really taking it easy with him, and just kind of making him do everything that an NFL quarterback would do. And it's going to be ugly at times. The process is not always linear, not always growing every single day, but I really believe in this long term. I think you need an alien to win in this league. And when you're investing in a 20, 21-year-old kid out of college, like, give him until he's 24, 25. And if it doesn't work, you don't have a job anyway after that, if it doesn't
Right.
work
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, put everything you can into making this work with this really athletic, really talented, really smart kid, and just figuring if he can, make it work on the football field. So far, I think the early return's been fine. Like, I don't think it's been great by any means, but I think it's been pretty fine. And I'm still really optimistic about the long term with Anthony Richardson.
For sure. And you made a great point about Shane Steichen kind of being the perfect guy. So when I had watched Anthony Richardson myself in college, it was one of those situations where you're looking at him and I'm saying, I see the elite quarterback here. You know what I'm saying? But also at the same time, you watch 5, 6, 7 games, you don't see him hit a 10-yard hitch. So you kind of have both of those things going on at once. So I was kind of split down the middle. And it wasn't until his post-draft press conference when I heard him speak and I said, oh, now I get it. You know what I'm saying? Because I was I'm not going to lie. I mean, I was on like someone else's draft show. I was floored when not floored. I wasn't surprised that they drafted him, but I was kind of like, just, oh my goodness, and I realized that they've invested in the human being. And I think why I'm so confident in him, one, obviously the talent, but two, just kind of like who he is. You know what I'm saying? Which is what everybody says. But ultimately, I think when you have the talent and you couple it with kind of who he is as a person, it's hard to not at least be optimistic about what it is. Certainly not jumping off the cliff, right? Off of this small sample size, if nothing else.
Yeah. And I think the big thing when it comes to just draft prospects and draft in general is so much of the draft is a crapshoot. Like, you could have the perfect process, draft the most safe player in the history of the draft, and then a couple injuries happen and they're not the safest player ever, like anymore, like
Colts fans would know that very well.
Yeah. Like Andrew Luck, the most can't miss generational quarterback prospect, really good quarterback in the NFL, but like, was he the generational quarterback in the NFL? Probably not. He was a good quarterback, but things happen, and some things are out of your control. But I think the biggest thing you can do is scout what this guy can do that nobody else can do, and scout the person. And I think that's the hard part, obviously, is scouting the person. Like, the Colts have tried different avenues to scout the person. You don't always know, obviously, but if you believe that someone has the growth potential with their growth mindset and the growth potential in their game, and then they can already do something that nobody else can do, and so their starting point is just so much higher, that's worth taking a shot. So you see this with Chris Ballard. And he's had his misses doing this. Malik Hooker was one of his first draft picks, and it just didn't work out here.
Yeah.
Paris Campbell, one of the greatest athletes, in that draft
His
class.
tape was unbelievable.
Yeah. And just the injuries happen, like it happens, but they were betting on that upside. So you see it miss with that, but you've seen it also hit with, like I don't want to say Quentin Nelson because he's obviously like an easy pick, but like you see it hit in other degrees too. Like Dio Dambo's a really good player, but you were betting on athletic upside with him. You weren't betting on what he was doing in college. He wasn't doing much in college. Kwity Paye, barely any production in college. And he's a really solid player right now. So I do think there is a degree that you have to manage that and just draft players off of good film and stuff like that too. But I do fully believe in the Chris Ballard mindset of drafting where it's like, look, this kid can do something that's just different. And if we can just hone that in, it's worth a shot. The draft is already a crapshoot. Like, I'm going to swing for the fences. And if I miss the ball and get a strike, whatever, that's fine. Like, at least I'm swinging for the fences. I'm trying to get that home run player in here. So I think that's what it was with Anthony Richardson. Like, Chris Ballard finally took a shot on a quarterback, the thing that we were begging him to do for years. And the kid he took a shot on is, he's swinging at a ball outside the strike zone, but he's swinging for the fences with it. So we'll see if it ends up working. Statistically, it's probably not going to work, but if it does, man, like this is a one-of-one quarterback. Like,
agreed. And everyone talks about, sorry to interrupt there, but everyone
you're good.
Talks about the inaccuracies, right? And, do you think, because I know you're a film guy, right? From what you're seeing, does that look like, right? Because it's one thing you could just like your mechanics can just overall be bad. They could not be there. But then also in the speed of an NFL game, if there's just a lack of comfort in what you're seeing or feeling, even if you have good mechanics, they can kind of just break down in the moment, right? There's a level of instinct that comes with that. To those people who would say you can't fix the accuracy issues with Anthony Richardson, what would your rebuttal be to those people?
I think that was true at one point in time with the NFL. I really do think it was, but nowadays, man, like offensive coordinators are so different nowadays than what I'm not saying that guys in the past weren't very good, but nowadays there's so many ways to hide deficiencies and create things for your quarterback. And the thing is, when you have a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, he also hides your deficiencies as a play caller too, because if a play breaks down, his ability to scramble and get out of the pocket and create hides your deficiencies of not scheming somebody open or not accounting for a blitz and stuff like that. But to talk about just the inaccuracies, I think there are things that are unfixable. And it's like, look, if a guy is in the pocket taking a ton of sacks, like he's just not feeling pressure well, he's bailing out the back of the pocket and falling down and looking uncomfortable back there, like never looking comfortable, and then he's just not seeing the field well. Yeah, I think to a degree that's kind of unfixable. Maybe if a guy has certain physical talents, you can maybe work through that. But like, we've seen two recent draft busts, Kenny Pickett and Bryce Young, two guys who really didn't have the best physical tools. They really need to be developed, confident players. They lost their confidence early and they just were scared of the pocket. They couldn't move well in the pocket. They couldn't get the ball out when they were creating and they were missing throws. And it's like, those are the guys where it's like, yeah, they're probably never going to get it. But when you look at what Richardson is doing, I think his eyes are always in the right place. Like, there are some throws where he tries to push the issue a little bit, like late in that Green Bay game, like they were desperate. He was pushing it. He tried to move a defender with his eyes and threw a pick that just didn't work out. But like, those are like normal quarterback plays, like this is a guy who he sees the field well. Like, look at most of his picks this year. They've been poor mechanics and overthrows, but like he's throwing it to an open guy. Like,
I agree with that 100%. Yeah. I think a lot of the times it's a missed throw issue more than it is a bad read issue. Now, of course, if you were to nitpick any quarterback throughout the court, he's going to miss some, particularly one at his age. But for me, I look at a guy like him. I say, listen, I'm okay believing, even if some people would say it's delusional, like I give a shit. The throws will come. You know what I'm saying? I'm just most concerned is he seeing this the right way? And I think he is. Now, the idea of him being benched is something that even if it's like just a small little part of the fan base, it's a vocal part of the fan base, right? We live on the internet. It is what it is. Based off of your reaction right there, I would assume outside of injury, you don't see a reasonable scenario where that happens at all, right?
Yeah, look, he just needs reps, man. Look at the NFL that we're living in right now. Who are the quarterbacks that are dominating right now, or at least playing some good football? We've got Sam Darnold. We've got Geno Smith. Yeah. We've got Baker Mayfield. What's the common factor in all these kids? They struggled earlier in their career,
Yeah.
And as they got older, whether from, again, some of them sat on the bench, but like as they got older, they figured stuff out, like they just played a lot of ball. Sam Darnold's played how many countless games in the NFL? Baker Mayfield has started for like 7 years in the NFL at this point. Former first overall pick bust, putting it together in his second, third stint, fourth stint, whatever it is
Yeah.
that he's on right now. Geno Smith, one of the greatest stories ever. Like, I know he sat on the bench for a long time, but like he was able to put it together. Like, it takes time for these people, especially for someone like Richardson, who came into the NFL with under 20 starts in his career. I don't even think he's at 30 starts since high school as of right now. I don't even think he's
No,
there
dude,
yet.
I'm not even sure if he's at 20, dude. I think it's like
Yeah.
maybe 19 or 20 or something like that. To play devil's advocate a little bit, because I'm on your side. I don't think, not for anything. If you bench Anthony Richardson, for what is the point, right? This season, we could talk about, and we cover the team, right? You talk about defensive players, and we like to spotlight different guys. This season is about Anthony Richardson and nothing else at the end of the day. You know what I'm saying? It just is
Right.
what it is. But I do find it an interesting thing because I ponder this sometimes. Technically, do you think this team would be a better football team if Flacco was the starter, at least this season?
I think in some ways, yeah. And maybe current, like right now, they have better chance at winning football games right now than what they would with
Sure.
Anthony Richardson. Do I think if Richardson starts majority of these first half games, do I think in the second half of the season, a Joe Flacco led team and a Richardson with more starts under his belt and figuring out the game a little bit better is a better team? No, I think a Richardson led team is probably going to be better. Like, again, these guys get better with more experience. Like, as the game slows down for him, he will be able to hit more of these throws that he's missing right now. And even if we're looking right now, though, like when Richardson is on the field, the Colts are one of the most explosive offenses in football. They're one of the most dangerous run offenses in football. And they don't take many sacks. They don't have many negative plays. Now, you have to live with some turnovers because he is a playmaker in his heart, and he will force some things. He will be a little loose with the ball at times because he's always trying to make the big play. But again, you gain the explosives, you gain the run game. With Flacco, like your short passing game needs to be so efficient to counteract the drop off in the run game, the drop off in explosives, and the fact that you're going to take more sacks with Flacco. So I think maybe they could win more games with Flacco early in the season here, but like again, it's just a different style of offense. Like it's like the Minshew versus Richardson last year. It's like, do they win 9 games last year with Richardson? Maybe. Like I can't really tell for sure, but like I can't say no because like it's not like the offenses were like that much worse with Richardson. He's still producing. It's just very volatile is the big thing with Richardson. But you live with that, man. You live with the ebbs and flows and hope it evens out to what he can do in the long term.
For sure. And then to keep it on the topic of young players, we're going to shift off of AR and then switch on to AD, right? AD Mitchell. Just full disclosure, you want to, and I may end up wrong. Who knows? Again, very, very early. I could not have been any more high on him, as like it's very rare that you like a player that much and then your team drafts him. You know what I'm saying? So I was out here just like, dude, this guy, like, one of these deals. You know what I'm saying? I didn't even go through it. But a number of people right now are watching the games and they're coming out and saying, he looks perhaps a bit apprehensive about getting hit. I mean, even with that, a Steelers fan would refer to the play as the one where they made that bad call on Minkah Fitzpatrick. For me, I did kind of look at it, and I don't want to say anything bad about the player. That's a ball you can go get, right? I mean, it's a ball that some guys you'd really like him to go make a play on. So I suppose my question is kind of really twofold. One, are you at all surprised that he hasn't made an immediate impact for this team? And then 2, are you seeing that the same way? Are you seeing an apprehensiveness? And if so, do you think that's something that can be fixed, or that's just kind of in your guts? Like that's just who you are as a player?
It's funny to even just go back on my AD Mitchell evaluation. He was the most frustrating player for me to watch in this last class, and frustrating in terms of it might be kind of like Anthony Richardson to a degree, where it's like this is a young player who has mastered the hardest part of playing the position, which is beating guys in press coverage and getting open. Like he knows how to do all those things. But when you're watching him on film, it's like, what is with the pacing on some of these routes, man? Like some of the pacing, it's just so slow and lethargic, and some misses come from this. And then you're seeing drops that shouldn't be happening. You're seeing no yards after the catch. Like it's such a weird film that you're watching, but like he was still my wide receiver 6 with like a first round grade because what he can do is so special. And
Yeah.
it's such an interesting conversation to go from Anthony Richardson to AD Mitchell, because I do think these are two players that the Colts have invested in with pretty high picks. I mean, obviously Richardson a little bit more of an investment, but two high picks, and they're two really athletic young players who have mastered the hardest part of their craft. Like,
Yeah.
Richardson doesn't take sacks and hits explosives. That's the hardest thing a quarterback can do, is not taking sacks and
Yeah.
hitting explosives. Hitting layups is the easiest part. Like, why are you not hitting layups? For AD Mitchell, getting off the line, winning in press, and getting open, that is everything that makes a receiver. But winning at the catch point is also another thing you have to do. And playing through contact and being physical and being on time with your quarterback is another thing you have to do. So, yeah, I do think to a degree, he might just need to be hit. Like, he needs one good hit on him or
Yeah.
something. I
Just
don't
to
know
get it
what
out of
it
his
is.
system, right? Like someone just needs to
Yeah.
give him a lick, you know what I'm saying? And be like,
Yeah.
oh, not all that bad. Or hopefully it doesn't go bad, right? Knock
Yeah,
on wood,
hopefully.
right? Because then it's over, right? At that
Right.
point, yeah.
Right. Like, he might just need to get the shit kicked out of him on one play and then just be like, all right, that's all it is. Like, because you see this with, like, I've seen this so many times, like a really talented freshman kid comes into a high school team, and you're expecting him to be this star player, but they weigh like $110. So they
Yeah.
get out there and they get that one big hit, and they're like, oh, I could play here. I just, it hurts. I got to put on some weight in the future, and it hurts a little bit, but like, this is fine. Like, so it might just be something like that, where he just needs to take that big hit. But honestly, when it comes to him, like, again, he's got the hardest part of the position down right now.
Yeah.
He's 21. He doesn't even turn 22 until like November. Like, this is one of the youngest receivers in football. He's getting out there. He's getting open. I'm not too concerned as of right now. Like, yes, I want to see him be more aggressive at the catch point. I want to see the gator arms go away a little bit. But I firmly believe as long as you're getting open in the NFL, eventually the catches will come, and eventually you'll put it together. Like, I'm not too concerned with him long term. It's kind of like, again, the Anthony Richardson thing. Like, you have to go through some lumps and bruises early on with these guys, but what they could be in the future is much more promising. I mean, Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr., much older wide receiver prospects when they came out, but they didn't really start putting it together until age 24. I mean, Pittman, it was his second year, age 24. Pierce, this is his 24-year-old season, and he's having his best season as of right now.
Yep.
So I really think, like, as he gets older, as he matures, as Reggie Wayne starts kicking the shit out of him a little bit more in practice, like,
Yeah.
we'll be good. Like, we'll be good. He'll be able to figure it out. But yeah, this kid is so talented. Like, as long as he's still getting open, like, I don't care. He could have a 10% catch rate this year. As long as he's getting open, man, eventually the targets will hit him, and he'll, make something happen with them.
For sure. So we are now at about, once upon a time, this was the quarter point of the season, but now we have the 17th game. So I guess, the math doesn't work out quite the same, but we get the point here, right? When we think about some of the expectations that we had of this team coming into the season, right? And some of the takes that we had in the offseason. The secondary was a major, major topic. And obviously names like, for example, a Justin Simmons, right? That's one. We look at the way that Nick Cross is playing, another young player for the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, he has been very impressive, particularly just in the way, I mean, they let him play his game, right? They're not asking him to be anything he isn't, which I think is kind of why you're seeing him play so fast. But you look and say, okay, well, once upon a time, we would have said, you got to go get Justin Simmons. Now you look at a move like that and say, not for anything. Good old bargain bin Ballard, right? I mean, that one doesn't look too bad, right? I mean, that's like a decent football decision, all things considered. But overall in the secondary, how has this thing panned out versus how you expected it to, and particularly in the corner room?
Yeah, I think overall it's panned out maybe a little bit better than expected. Not great, obviously. Like, look, they've allowed 700 yards passing the last two games. Like, we're not going to sit here and say it's been amazing.
Yeah.
But a lot of those came in like the fourth quarter when the game was, I don't want to say put on ice because they were one-score games, but, a lot of these teams coming back, Gus Bradley sitting back a little bit more. And I, to a degree, I kind of understand him sitting back a little bit more, because if you go and press with these really young kids they have at corner, you might get toasted out there a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think overall it's been fine. Like, it hasn't been amazing. I don't think it's anything to like write home about and be like, oh my gosh, Jalen Jones, cornerback 1 for the next 10 years. Samuel Womack, this kid is going to be a superstar. Like, I don't think it's to that degree, but like, they're going out there, they're competing, they're playing some good ball. And overall, I think it's been perfectly adequate. Like, they're not allowing too many explosives down the field. I know George Pickens got behind Jalen Jones on Sunday, but look, super athletic wide receiver who's the master at pushing off against an not very athletic corner in Jalen Jones. Like, it's a difficult matchup for him. They had him in press for a lot of that game against George Pickens. So kudos to Jalen Jones for showing up for that matchup even and being competitive. But I think it's been fine. Like, it really hasn't been this major detriment. I mean, as long as the Colts defense has been fine in run defense, the overall defense has been okay. Like, I don't think it's going to be much better than that, especially with every single edge rusher on this team hurt right now. Like,
goodness gracious. Yeah, you're not kidding.
Yeah. I don't think it can be much better than okay unless these guys come back and dominate again up front. But they've been fine. Like, Nick Cross, like you said, has been very good this year. Like, fantastic in run defense, really solid in pass coverage. Like, not great in pass coverage, but solid. Jalen Jones, I think, has been competitive every game. Samuel Womack has played really well these last 3 games. Julian Blackmon's been Julian Blackmon. Like, yes, I still think they could have grabbed more depth out there. Like, it didn't have to be a Justin Simmons, but like somebody besides Trevor Denbo being safety 4, or Ronnie Thomas is the backup.
No disrespect, Trevor Denbo.
Yeah, I love me some Trevor Denbo. That's my boy right there. But special team, that's my special teams boy right there. But yeah, like, we have David Long coming up on game days. Like, it's just like, maybe be a little more proactive in the offseason, like adding experienced guys. I mean, I know David Long's experienced, but like, come on.
Right.
With the team in a while. But yeah, like, I think they could have been more proactive with that. But like, I was all in favor of these young kids playing. I just wanted someone behind them. And, to Ballard's credit, Womack has been a good find so far. So maybe he knows what he's doing to a degree. Like, again, I still criticize the guy, but outside of 2022, it's never been awful, I guess.
Right. That was where the bottom fell out. Like, I think a lot of people get caught up in Ballard and saying it's been nothing but misery and losing. And it's like, no. Well, let's revive. It's been mediocrity. Okay. But losing would imply that you have a losing record, right? And it's not like the Colts are just rich with all these losing seasons under Ballard. It's more of just kind of like, we've grown accustomed to a certain way in the 2000s, and it hasn't quite been that. And just to speak to Jalen Jones, I mean, I happen to love him, and maybe I get caught up in a little bit of that Ballard rhetoric because there's no one that hypes up a 7th-round pick more than that guy. But Jalen Jones, I have never seen someone get beat. Like sometimes he'll be like on a guy, like he couldn't be any more on a guy. Like, he's like mugging the dude, and they'll still catch it on him. I don't know how you fix that, but it's one of those deals where sometimes I'm like, dude, like there was the Nico Collins catch on the sideline.
Yeah.
And the text, I'm like, you can't play it any better than that. I mean, what are you supposed to do? And, hopefully not too many people hold it against him. To stick on the defensive side of the ball, though, talk about Gus Bradley, right? You're talking about him sitting back a little bit. We've seen the defense perform a little bit better in these past 2 games. Now, albeit, right, it's against the Chicago Bears and the Steelers offense, who are exactly who I thought they were going into that game. I was not buying what they were selling, at least on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, different story. But have you at all seen Gus Bradley do anything different in these past 2 games than what we've grown accustomed to seeing him do? Or do you more attribute it to just, kind of bad offenses that we've been versing?
Yeah, Gus has changed a little bit this year. I mean, to his credit, he has changed a little bit. I know I'm a little higher on Gus than most of the fan base is. I know most of the fan base wants him just gone and never coaching again. And look, I'm not here to say Gus Bradley's the best defensive coordinator in football. Like, I'm not even here to say he's inadequate. Like, he's fine. Like, he knows what he's doing. I would argue he knows what he's doing. I know some people would argue against that in the fan base.
That's a fair argument on your part, by the way. Been around a while. You know what I'm saying?
He's been around a while. Yeah. And look, to his degree, this year he has changed a little bit. Like, the first 2 games, they had Nick Cross playing more free safety. Sitting back a little bit, and they were kind of they were going into these shells a little bit on early downs, like these 2 high type shells, so they could keep their corners from getting beat deep. And it was kind of against what he typically did. And as a result, they were pulling that safety out of the box from what they used to have. And to the Texans' credit, they ran all over it. They ran power and gap like really, really bad on them. So what Gus has done these last 2 games has really been on 1st and 2nd down, we're having Nick Cross in the box, like old school Gus Bradley, like we're going to have that strong safety in the box. And Nick Cross has been one of the best run stuffing safeties in football. And then what you're seeing on 3rd down in these first 4 games is he's doing a lot of stuff. Like, he's doing a lot of cover 2. He's doing a lot of cover 1 man. You're still seeing some cover 3 in there, but I think the last 2 years he has been like number one in the NFL by far and away in cover 3 usage, like by far and away, because that's just Gus Bradley, right?
Yeah.
This year, I think he's like 8th or 9th in cover 3 usage. Like it's a lot more quarters, cover 2, cover 1, and they're blitzing a little bit more this year. It's not a ton, but they are blitzing a little bit more. So I do think we have seen him change a little bit. Now, my how do I say this? My disagreements with Gus to a degree, or my qualms with Gus is he does get into the shell a little bit in the second half when they're leading games. And so does Shane Steichen. So maybe it is a Shane Steichen thing. I'm not too sure.
Yeah.
But in the first half of that game against the Steelers, like Gus was calling a fantastic game. They were bringing down Nick Cross and having 3, like they were not in their nickel personnel. They were in their base defense. They were bringing Cross into the box too. And they were just killing that run game early against Arthur Smith, who loves to run it. And then on third down, they were bringing these really cool exotic blitzes. It was like the first 2.5 quarters of this game against the Steelers. And then they had a 3-score lead and halfway through the third, and Gus like brings 4 and it's contained rushes for most of the rest of the game. And to a degree, I get it because you don't want Justin Fields to get out of the pocket, but like he was getting out of the pocket.
I was gonna say, he still did. Yeah.
So it's like at that point, you got to use like a coffee house stun or like a delayed blitzer or a delayed spy or something with Zaire Franklin or EJ Speed, so you can really contain that scramble, because most of the Steelers' big plays came on scrambles or him getting out of the pocket and throwing it down the field. So that's where Gus and I kind of have our philosophical differences, where I think overall he's fine in what he does. I think he can do a little bit better with pre-snap disguise. You can kind of tell what defense the Colts are going to be in by what they're doing pre-snap. They don't really disguise much. So I think that's another issue with him. But for the most part, I think he's done a good job of growing a little bit these last couple of years. Maybe it's not this exponential growth towards a new system or anything, but he has worked in a lot more cover 2. He's worked in a lot more cover 4. He is, to a degree, hiding these corners. I mean, Samuel Womack and Dallas Flowers have been targeted like 5 times in over 100 coverage snaps the last 3 games. Like, these guys are not getting targeted, which speaks to those guys. Like, they're playing sound football, but Gus is also rolling help a little bit that way and making sure those guys are not getting picked on. And it's putting a lot more on Jalen Jones's plate, but Jalen Jones is more up to the challenge right now than those guys are, because they're just not as good as Jalen Jones is right now on the other side. So I think he's doing a lot of good things. I think he's doing some things he can improve on, but overall, I mean, when you have, again, your whole defensive line's hurt, your top 2 corners are out right now, it is hard to kind of overcome that at times. But he is giving the Colts a chance to win with his game plan the last 2 games. And the Colts have won. So I can't complain too much about Gus. I will complain on Sundays, but I can't complain too much right now because we're in between the games. But on Sundays, yeah, sure, I'll complain a little bit on Sundays.
That is an incredibly sound analysis, Zach Hicks. That's why we have you here. Excellent stuff right there. You spoke about your philosophical differences with Gus Bradley. Kind of curious to hear if we talk about the overall team build, right? Chris Ballard's overall philosophy when it comes to building a team, of course, he likes to start in the trenches and then work his way out. Now, some people say that maybe in today's game that's a little bit outdated because, all of the stuff that people are doing on the perimeter these days, it's become such a passing league, right? And people look at the Colts secondary and they say not for anything. There's no real draft capital invested into that position overall, right? Particularly at the cornerback spot. But then at the same time, you could go back on the other end and say, okay, when you look at the offensive and defensive line, there's plenty of draft capital spent there. So it's not like we have a team of like no-name scrubs. You know what I'm saying? But when you look at the league today, do you agree or disagree with the way that Chris Ballard builds a team in the sense of what he prioritizes as far as the units go? I'm kind of curious, how you weigh those things.
Yeah, I don't know where I really fall on the trenches versus skill players on offense or defense. I can't say that Ballard is wrong necessarily, because there is a place for like he commits a lot of resources to the trenches on both sides. Like,
yeah,
more so than most general managers. He throws a lot of resources on the defensive line. I mean, heck, they were going big for Danielle Hunter this offseason. They weren't able to land him, and they drafted Laiatu Latu at the 15th pick when everyone and their mother knew they were going for a receiver in that class. Like, they really wanted a wide receiver, and he was like, screw it, I'll just take a pass rusher.
Yeah. I was stunned. I can't lie.
No, me too. I was like, okay, if he goes pass rusher, maybe Dallas Turner, but I was expecting like a Brian Thomas or a trade back or something, because he wanted a receiver that bad. Like, he really wanted a wide receiver. And they got Adonai Mitchell, your boy, in round 2. But like, I don't think he's necessarily wrong because you even look at like some of these teams, like look at the Kansas City Chiefs, for instance.
Sure.
You know, they won their first Super Bowl with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, and Pat Mahomes being the god that he was that season. And they were fantastic. And then they
Yeah.
lost to the Buccaneers because their offensive line was getting killed.
Yes,
Like
sir.
offensive line was getting killed on defense. They had nobody else rushing the passer except for Chris Jones. And it was a really bad thing for them. Now they haven't really changed too much of their pass rush since then. Like it's still kind of just Chris Jones at this point. But
Yeah.
after that, they revamped that entire offensive line. They devoted so many resources to left tackle, right tackle, guard, center, took Creed Humphrey high, took Trey Smith high. Now some of that is luck, obviously hitting on Trey Smith in round 7. Hitting on Creed Humphrey in round 2, I believe. But they put big money on Joe Tooney. They had other tackle. I mean, I know their tackle play is bad right now, but they spent money on I mean, I think they spent big money on Orlando Brown after that too, like tons of money on the offensive line, and it helped them become back-to-back champions because of how much they put in that offensive line. And again, you have the quarterback; it helps a little bit there. So I don't think it's necessarily wrong to build from the trenches out. It just when you're someone like Ballard, when it comes to his overall philosophy, you have to be like perfect in your drafting. And
Yes.
he's a good drafter. Like he's a good drafter,
Yeah.
very good drafter. But when you kind of neglect free agency to the degree that he does, you do kind of have to be perfect. Where I kind of have my philosophical differences is I'm fine. Put all your resources in D line and O line. I'm cool with it. Like do that there. But like there are deals to be had for a veteran corner who can step in and play some ball. There are deals to be had for a depth wide receiver who can fill in a pinch so you don't have to be down to 3 receivers like they were last year at times.
Yeah.
A veteran tight end who can come in and work in your system. So I do think there are ways that he could, spend properly, like spend better on the bottom of his roster. But overall, I think he's like mostly good with his roster construction. He just kind of missed on the quarterback a lot. That was kind of where
Right.
a lot of our issues were. It's like the Matt Ryan miss, the Carson Wentz miss, the Jacoby Brissett miss. He got put into a weird position with that, but
Yeah.
Jacoby Brissett miss, like those misses at quarterback are mainly where this team fell short. The roster building's mostly been good. You might believe in his guys a little bit too much, and I do think that's certainly a thing with him.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, he's a good GM. It's just how long do you get to be a good GM, or a fine GM that doesn't get playoff wins? I understand the complaints that people have about all the situation, but I do think Ballard is mostly pretty good at his job.
Yeah, and I think it's probably safe to say at this point, right? You look at, okay, now we finally, because obviously people like me, who are one of the top 5 Chris Ballard apologists maybe of all time, certainly the biggest one in New York, I would always look and say, okay, it's the quarterback. But now that you have him, right? I mean, someone like me, it could only go so far, right? So you kind of look and you say it has to be tied to whatever this Anthony Richardson experiment is.
Yes.
And at that point, right, this is kind of where the buck stops. So that right there was everything I had for the Colts specifically, Zach. So buckle up, because now we're going to talk about you more specifically. And I'm just curious right off the bat, what is your background in football? Because you don't strike me as the type of guy who like just started playing fantasy with his buddies and then got into it that way. Like, did you play football or something? Like, really?
Oh man, as a kid, I played a lot of football. I didn't play much in high school or anything. I mean, look at this physique, everybody. I didn't play.
Oh yeah,
much
neither of us were in any danger of playing the big time.
Yeah.
This much
I
we
played
know.
1 year in high school, and it was fine. I was like wide receiver 12 on the roster, and getting out there for garbage time on the freshman team and stuff like that. But I mean, look, I played little league ball my whole life growing up. I mean, I played from age 7 until my 8th grade year. I think I broke my arm my 8th grade year, but I played every year there. I was a center. I was a guard. Like I played everything across the offensive line because I was so underweight for my age that I always had to play down with the other kids. So I'm like a 4th grader who's like 50 pounds playing with 2nd graders who are like 80 pounds. And like, here's the thing, man, like, even if you're the skinniest 4th grader, you're more developed than that 2nd grader, so you can push them around a little bit, even if you under.
That probably felt pretty good.
Yeah, man. I was like, man, I'm so good at this game. Like, it's easy pushing around a bunch of kids who, just getting into elementary school and stuff. But now I did play a lot when I was a kid, but like your understanding of the game when you're playing wing T or whatever offense in 2nd grade is so different than.
Yeah.
Look, my high school coach was a spread offense guy. He came from North Carolina, came up to coach our school, came in with a spread offense. Dude, we were no huddle, spread offense. Everybody had a play sheet on their arm. And it was like just a couple checks. And it was like, hey, if we call this check, you're running a slant. You call this check, you're running a button hook or something. Like, it's very spread offense. So you understand a little bit more. Like just watching that, I was like, oh my God, like this is not wing tee football. This is not, Army option football that I'm learning when I'm playing Little League. So, I'm not saying that my high school experience like made me reach out to more of like the nerdy aspects of football. But as I got later in high school, I kind of pushed away from playing the sport and just kind of had an interest in the sport. And
For sure.
look, my fandom growing up was Washington football team, Washington Commanders, my team. It was starting to die by my late high school life though, because like,
understandably so.
look, RG3 didn't work out. My
still got time to go
broken.
back with this kid, James Daniels.
Yeah, maybe I could, man. But like the RG3 thing broke my heart, and I was just kind of broke. The Alex Smith trade really was what broke it, I think, for me. I was like, this is dumb. I don't like this anymore. So I got really into just kind of the sport itself. Like the draft was a big thing for me. And it's hard to really watch the draft without really getting into the nerdy aspects of everything, from analytics to scheme, like what teams are asking players to do and stuff like that. So it kind of just grew from there. But yeah, my background with football is really not playing much. It's mostly just taking in a lot of content, reading a lot of stuff. Matt Bowen from ESPN and Bleacher Report was a big influence for me. I watched a lot of coaching clinics, especially on offensive line play, because that's really where I was really interested when I got older. So you kind of learn a lot just from all the available resources out there. And I think the coolest thing about my journey to this and how I got into this is my journey is not exclusive to man who played football, dude who played football. My journey could be followed by woman, anybody, any foreigner who doesn't even know the sport, like coming over from, anywhere in Europe or whatever, being like, oh, I don't understand football. Like, let me get into it. Like, my journey is not exclusive to dude who grew up playing football and can just talk because of that. Like, it can be, you could never have touched a football in your life and you could do the same things I did. Like, I just watched a lot of things on it and kind of became familiar with the sport. So yeah, it's nothing like, former player or anything like that. Just talk to people who played the sport, talk to other people who are more knowledgeable, and just be open and learning. And you'll eventually get some of that information in the back of your head. I saw you did a pretty cool, you were breaking down cover 3 or cover 2 or something like that on your channel. I was watching that. Yeah. And it's like, just stuff like that. Like even if it doesn't have to be this mostly like in-depth, like let me go into match coverages and coverage travel rules and stuff, but even if it's something that's just like giving people that general knowledge, like people can take that and go from there, as long as you have the base knowledge. So like stuff like that is always great for people. Like you can learn so much just from watching stuff like that.
Okay, so that's interesting. That Washington fact I wasn't aware of. So when did you start covering the Colts then? And what kind of made you get into covering the Colts? Like, how did that happen?
My first job in writing was when I was at college. I had bad insomnia. I couldn't really do college stuff. Like it was clearly not going to work out, the whole college thing for me. So I was like, I'm just going to try to find something to keep my interest before I drop out of college here. And I started writing about the NFL draft. And I was like, you know what? I'll just start typing some stuff up on like Blogspot or something like that. I think that's what it was. Blogspot. I had like 100 Twitter followers back then. This was like 2015, I think. Sure. And I was like, this Ronnie Stanley kid is going to be the best left tackle in football. I love him. Marcus Mariota, fine quarterback, but Ronnie Stanley taken first overall. Yeah, this guy stinks. Yeah. They should have taken Ronnie Stanley, baby. That's the guy right there. Dude. And dude, all it is writing, right? You just get out there, you write whatever comes to your mind. Doesn't have to be smart, doesn't have to be good. Just get out there and really try to figure it out. And somebody will notice, as long as you're putting in the work. So this site that has become infamous for like breeding ground for so many dudes. It's a dead site now, but so many people started there. It's called Pro Football Spot is what it was back in the day. And it had like Jake Arthur was there. I didn't even know him back then, but my co-host Jake Arthur, John Ledyard was there. Michael Kist was there. There were so many people that ended up. Ben Solak was there for a little bit, who's now with ESPN. Jordan Reed, I think, was there for a little bit, who's now with ESPN. And we all kind of did our Pro Football Spot working in different departments from each other. And I think I scouted linebackers. I was like really into, who was I into? It was Landon Roberts was my boy back then. Jatavius Brown out of Akron, I remember really liking.
That's the real deal, Zach.
Oh,
That's
Tyler
when you know you're diving.
Matakevich from Temple, like,
That's when you're diving
yeah.
deep.
Yeah, man, I was into it, and I wrote up like 30 scouting reports, and then, me and this couple guys formed our own site. We wrote up like a couple hundred scouting reports for the next draft cycle, and then they just get you noticed by people. And as we try to make the site bigger for an NFL audience, I wrote about the Colts hiring Frank Reich. I was like, here's what Frank Reich needs to do to turn around the Colts. And I knew of the Colts pretty well because my best friend growing up was a big Colts fan, and we always compared Luck and RG3 in
Sure.
like history class together and stuff like that. And he was heartbroken for me when the RG3 thing happened.
It all came back around.
Yeah, I was heartbroken for both of us when the Andrew Luck thing happened because I was covering the Colts then.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I did the Frank Reich thing, and then Matt Danley of SB Nation saw me write about Frank Reich, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to come, write for us over at Stampede Blue, SB Nation?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, sure. I mean, I just want to let you guys know I'm not a Colts fan, but like I'll write for you guys." And the rest is history, man. I've been with them. I was with them for a couple years. That's kind of where I had my come up in this scene here. And then a couple years ago, I made the jump over to SI here. And then Jake and I got offered over at Locked On. And now people know the name Zach Hicks in Indianapolis, I guess. I don't know. Like, I love you guys. You guys are great. Just a random dude over here in Virginia knowing the name Zach. I see it on the Colts Reddit and all that and talking about Hicks. And it's like, it's a fun time. Like, I really appreciate all you guys. But yeah, it's been fun, man. It's been almost 10 years. I think I overlap with Ballard perfectly. So whatever Ballard's year he's in is how long I've been covering the Colts. And I've converted to Colts fandom since then too, because like I lost my love for Washington over that time.
So that was going to be my next question was like, okay, so like you are a Colts fan to put you on the spot.
Okay. Yeah. Right. I want success for the Colts. Like the first couple years, man, it was like, yeah, I mean, I don't have the same, and it's not the same love, that childhood love you have for your team. It's not the same love. Like I can't say I have the same love for the Colts as what I used to have for Washington. Like it doesn't impact my week. Well, it impacts my week a little bit because I have to talk about it now.
Sure. So you get caught up in everything.
You get caught up in it a little bit, but like it doesn't impact me the way it used to. But like, look, I want the Colts to win. Like it's much more fun talking about wins. I want all, and especially when I talk to some of these players now, like I want the best for these guys, like Zaire Franklin, Will Fries. Like I've talked to these guys in the past and they're really cool dudes and I enjoy talking with them. Like I want those guys to be all pros every year and be the greatest players that ever play the sport. Like I love those guys. Like, you kind of grow this emotional connection to the team. Maybe if it's not the same as it was when you were like a little kid or anything like that.
Are there any hobbies you consistently partake in outside of just like being a football guy?
Oh my gosh, dude, I got ADHD. I have a million hobbies. It's a new hobby every single day. Let's see. I got records on my walls around me here. I haven't really played many of them on my record player, though. I like the designs of them, I guess.
Okay.
I have a bookshelf over here of books I've read and all that. I've got watch a lot of TV with my wife, watch a lot of anime. That's probably interesting for a football guy being like, I love anime and manga.
Yeah, I saw on your Twitter, your banner had a little anime thing going on.
Yeah, anime is fun, man. It's really fun. But again, that's more of like the last 2 years. I didn't watch any before the last 2 years, but ADHD, you grab something and it becomes your favorite thing ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that stuff, man. Like I always find little things to get obsessed with for a little bit. I mean, that's kind of what football is for me too. Like it's kind of also a hobby. Like I'll just go watch coaching clinics on my own, not really for my job, just be like, oh, this seems fun to watch, and kind of just study the game that way just for the fun of it.
For sure. Well, I mean, that definitely shows in what you're doing. So then let me ask, you said 2015 is when you first started writing, if I'm remembering that year correctly?
2015 is when I first started writing in general. Yeah. Colts was 2017 or 2018. Yeah. I think it was Colts.
So if you could offer one piece of advice to Zach Hicks in 2015, kind of about what was coming for him, what would it be?
Stick with it. Stick with it because you'll eventually get paid. I promise. Like it's going to take a while though. Drop out of college before you go, maybe.
Yeah.
Don't lose your money on college. But no, I really think it's like, look, and this is for all people who want to get it, because I get DMs a lot and I try to answer people on DMs. It's hard because Twitter is a mess right now, but I try to answer people the best I can. But like, look, if you really want to get into like this industry in terms of podcasting, YouTube creation, writing, whatever it is, just do it. Like, just you don't have to have a job right out the gate. Like, I know it's a hard thing to say, like, because you never want to say people work for free or anything, but like, if you really enjoy it, man.
Oh yeah, no, we're working for free. I understand.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I didn't get
yeah.
first paycheck until 2019. Like, come on, like, you work for free for a while, or your first paychecks are like $10. But like, just get out there and do your thing, man. Like, if you find joy from it, like, you can treat it like a hobby. You know, it's the same as me collecting vinyls, like, or you know, and all that. Like, if you really love it, write on some blog spot or whatever. Like, this is the draft guys I like. It could be one person reads it. That's all it takes sometimes, you know. Or for YouTube stuff, like, as long as you understand like SEO and stuff, and you just keep constantly posting stuff, you'll eventually get up to 2,000-3,000 subscribers. Whoever, like you said, like your goal is like 3,000. As long as you keep posting regularly and you know, working the system a little bit, you'll certainly get there. Like, it's like a passion project that turns into your job. So just keep at it, and eventually it can be something much bigger than what it is. It takes a while, though. It takes a while.
yeah. That part we're figuring out. But lucky for me, I mean, it's you know, one of the first times I've ever done something where it's like I really feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna have a problem sticking with it. Final question before I give you the rest of your night back. You've been very, very generous with your time. Is there anything right now that you're working on, or maybe something you recently released that you want to plug? We'll make sure to include it in the description of the episode.
Yeah, I mean, look, guys, Locked On, we're doing it pretty much daily throughout the week. Jake's got the crossover coming up tomorrow with the Jaguars guy, which will be, I'm sure, a fun time for both those guys. Not nihilistic on either end there with the crossover. But yeah, Locked On, you guys can always check that over there. And then for Horseshoe Huddle, man, it's a lot of film stuff. I mean, I wrote up Samuel Womack today, and Tanner Bortolini yesterday. You guys really love the Tanner Bortolini film stuff. I mean, we're all crossing our fingers on him being that,
he was impressive.
Next center. Yeah, he was impressive, man. But yeah, it's a lot of film stuff, man. Like, you know, go to my Twitter for the snark and a couple film clips. Go to Horseshoe Huddle for the film articles, and go to Locked On Colts for this beautiful voice is what you're going over there for.
Absolutely. Made for the microphone. That, everybody, is Zach Hicks. Zach, thank you so much for taking the time, brother. I really appreciate you. This was a good time.
Of course, man. Thanks for having me.